Greetings, unsettled souls, and welcome to the Correct Views. As Sam I beat the Gangi doing political commentary for the Media Speaks, you might know me from Blasting News, perhaps the Conservative Daily Post or Teddy Stick. For those of you that do know me with Blasting News, next week I'm going to be interviewing John Corabi's new band, the Dead Daisies. He's the singer, which you cool people might know from Motley Crue, and you really cool people might know from Armored Saint. I am then being blissfully sent, thank you, Chip, you know who you are. I'm being sent to the Judas Priest show again, and I'm going to be covering the Judas Priest Deep Purple show, and that is an awesome blessing. But that's not why you tuned in. You tuned in for the awesome, massive Fukushima update. So if I can call the right screen up and remember how to use my own computer, we're going to see if we can get this started. MIT Technology Review. Fukushima's nuclear signature found in California. Why? Now, I was just telling my Facebook listeners, I go live for a split second before, so make sure you subscribe to me on Facebook if you haven't. The radioactivity has been found in every single tuna that was yanked out of the water since the Fukushima disaster. Now it's being found in California. Why? Now, remember, crazy people like me said you should live on the West Coast. Common sense, there's a quadruple problem, at least a triple problem going on over here in Japan. Maybe you don't want to live where, you know, pretty much nature's barrier, the beaches. You don't want to live in Oregon, California, Hawaii, or Washington, D.C. on the coast. Just call it a hunch. Well, they said it wasn't going to show up in food. It wasn't going to matter. It's in the tuna, of course, but it's not going to bother anything on land. Now it's in the wine. Now the same people that told you that it wasn't going to be in the wine are telling you that it's safe to take the wine. I'm pretty sure this is what that Jones character told his followers. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like Hale-Bopp philosophy or something. Listen to this. Throughout the 1950s, the U.S., the Soviet Union, and others tested thermonuclear weapons in the Earth's atmosphere. Those tests released vast quantities of radioactive material into the air and triggered fears that the nuclear reactions could ignite deuterium in the oceans, thereby destroying the planet in a catastrophic accidental fireball. In other words, they thought that just testing the bomb could quite possibly set off a nuclear unstoppable reaction that would burn the planet just by using the oxygen, to put it in layman terms. But they did it anyway. Well, one of the most problems, atmospheric tests ended in 1980 when China finished its program. But one of the main problems, the process has left a long-lasting nuclear signature on the planet. Now, this is important, so don't go zoning out on me. I'll explain all the weird stuff. One of the most obvious signatures is cesium-137, a radioactive byproduct of fission uranium-235. Now, I'm going to give it to you. You can see the long hair. You can see the tattoos. So you can tell I'm probably going to give this to you in a different way than you would expect. Whenever a band, let's say a death metal band or something like that, really comes out, and nice tuna piano, Nick, and they really want to name their band something scary. So they name it Obituary, Death, Cancer. Cesium-137 is the name of a very dark electronic industrial band, which I'm sure many of you know. That is how dangerous this is. To take it out of the scientific realm that bores everybody out, it's one of the, if not the most deadly element ever created. It's one of the most deadly elements in the known universe. It is toxic to all life. After the release into the atmosphere, cesium-137 was swept around the world and found its way into the food supply in trace quantities. Yeah, trace quantities. Why is it that cancer seems to be, I think it's 1 in 3, okay, when prior to nuclear bomb testing, it was nothing like that? Does it take a great genius to deduce that after we started creating cesium-137 and things like strontium-90, which give bone cancer, maybe, just maybe that's why we're dealing with so much cancer today. Okay, well, that's one of the things that Fukushima has managed to send around the world. So what's been happening lately? Since it's been getting into wine, the fight against wine fraud, labeling younger wines as older wines to inflate their price was common. Such fraud can be spotted by various types of chemicals. You can actually date wine now based on how much cesium-137 has been put into the environment. And it says that raises an interesting question about the Fukushima disaster of 2011, an accident of Chernobyl proportions. BS, it's much bigger. We've covered that on the show many times. It's a meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear following a huge earthquake. We just covered that. Is it possible to see the effects of the Fukushima nuclear disaster in California wines produced at the time? At the time, we can tell it now. They never capped it. Today, we got an answer thanks to the study carried out by Hubert and a couple of colleagues. In January of 2017, we came across a series of California wines, Cabernet Sauvignon, and if you're a wine expert and you think I butchered that, I did, because I'm not. Vintage 29 to 2012, they say, Hubert and Company. This set of wines provides the perfect test. The Fukushima disaster occurred on March 11th, 2011. Any wine made before that date should be free of the effects, while any wine dating afterward could show them. Oh, could show them? I thought the experts said it wasn't going to show up here, remember? That wasn't going to happen. Now they're talking about it as if it's, of course, common sense. It's just nothing to worry about now. You notice how they just move this in on people. Anyway, using their method, Hubert and his colleagues found measurable amounts of cesium-137 above background levels in the wine produced after 2011. It seems that there is an increase in activity in 2011 by a factor of 2. Okay, well, then we can take this in one of two ways. People streaming in on Facebook. Hello, Paul. Hello, Tom. Either it only affected the tuna and the wine, and it's just going to bother you a little bit. And it didn't bother to affect the milk, even though we know it affects all milk. It just avoided California milk because it liked liberals. It didn't affect chocolate because it likes fat people like me. It didn't affect mushrooms in California, which of course soak up everything out of the ground like sponge. No. Oh, it did? Or it must have just done it then in trace amounts. So it's not going to bother you. Of course, you're not supposed to ask what happens, how much is bad for you as you're drinking your wine, eating your mushrooms, having your Swiss cheese, and drinking some milk while you eat a candy bar. You're not supposed to ask that. Like Helen Collicott said, and again, I'm quoting a far leftist here. Dr. Helen Collicott, a pediatrician, said, if you eat a Hershey's chocolate bar after 3 Mile Island, you're insane. And if they want to sue me, she said, let them do so, because I would be happy to have the platform to expose this even bigger. Guess what? They never sued her. To me, that speaks volumes. Now listen to this. This is from the Medici. TEPCO halts sale of folders with Fukushima nuclear power plant pictures. The operator of the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant has halted its sale of file folders with photos showing the current conditions of the complex due to criticism. Now, they weren't making any money off them. They cost $2.70. That's 300 yen for those of you that care. The TEPCO official said that there was a few opportunities to show the real situation at the complex. What they were doing was trying to, like, Hitler Youth brainwash children here into saying, like me telling you, oh, look how nice this room looks. See all the aliens all set up nice and even, and pointing sticks where I need it. Everything's in order, little robots there, Zach. If I was to move the camera, it looks like the Fukushima tidal wave hit this room. But no, just look here. Everything is fine. You notice how authority tends to do that all the time, but you're not supposed to talk about it or address it or mention it or notice it. That's why you tune into my show. Idaho statesman, moving right along. INL specialists left plutonium in their car in the morning, and now it's gone. Okay, you know what? I'm not one to throw a big rock here. I went to Burger King earlier. They screwed up my burger, gave me another one. I have 2 bags. I brought 1 bag into the house, left the other bag in the car. I get it. It wasn't plutonium. This is why, this is back to America for this story, by the way. This is why all things nuclear at the end of the day are just dreadful. 2 security experts from the Department of Energy's Idaho National Laboratory drove to San Antonio, Texas in March 2017 with a sensitive mission to retrieve dangerous nuclear materials from a non-profit research lab there. The risk was to ensure that the radioactive materials did not fall into the wrong hands on the way back to Idaho, where the government maintains a stockpile of nuclear explosive Take 2 materials for the military and others. To ensure that they got the right items, it says that the specialists from Idaho brought radiation detectors and small samples of dangerous materials to collaborate them. Specifically, a plastic-covered disc of plutonium, a material that can be used to fuel nuclear weapons, and another of cesium, which we just talked about, a highly radioactive isotope that could potentially be used in a so-called dirty bomb. Now, let me explain to you real quick exactly how bad this could be. Hello, Chris. And Josh. He's right about the the organic food, by the way, although it still can be contaminated with radioactive poisons. I don't know if they test them for radioactivity or not, but good point, because they might. And if you can eat organic, by all means do. I wish I could afford to do so more often. Friends, when cesium is such a deadly poison that there's only been one there's never been a nuclear meltdown or anything in South America, which is why so many people in the nuke industry have bought property in South America, because if something goes bad, they know exactly where they know exactly where, take 2. I do this all live. They know exactly where it needs to be. So in Brazil, when they had the scrap people, they stole the container of cesium. They were trying to scrap it. And what they did was took apart a radiation machine. And they even had the blue glowing, what they call dirt, glow, and they were playing with it and putting it in their mouths, and their mouths would glow, and putting it on their sandwiches. Yep, it was cesium. So now you've got a child that was so radioactively poisoned that she had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. And her burial was protested by the people that lived in the town. And if you don't think that that is true, go ahead and look up the entire story. It's really easy to find, Brazilian nuclear disaster. I watched an entire movie about how it happened. I've read documentaries about it, and they tend to keep this quiet for a reason, because it explains not only how easy it is to make a dirty bomb, even by mistake, clearly, but also how often and how easy it is to get our hands on these materials. And it's particularly dangerous when someone is scrapping an X-ray machine. Okay, that happens. But this is made specifically as nuclear weapons. And now we're dealing with the fallout of our stupidity for having created them. To ensure that they got the materials, of course, I read that one. When they stopped at the Marriott Hotel just off 410, a high-crime neighborhood filled with temp agencies and ranch homes, they left those sensors on the back seat of the rented Ford Expedition. When they awoke the next morning, the window had been smashed, and the skeptical Veliz holding those sensors and nuclear materials had vanished. Poof, gone, presto. This shows, too, you don't park a car that nice in a neighborhood like that without thinking twice. I know that because I grew up and live in 44703. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's a nice place to die. The people that were conducting, and they probably made such good money and came from such high backgrounds that they, temp agencies meant very little to them. They didn't put it together because they simply were like an alien from another world coming into a poor neighborhood. That's very, very common with people that make a good deal of money and who have their whole life. Nothing against them. I'm a capitalist. I'm just saying that life with blinders on is very common for those people. Well, more than a year later, state and federal officials don't know where the plutonium is, one of the most valuable and dangerous substances on Earth. Nor has the cesium been restored. You can read the rest of it at the Idaho Statesman, but you get the point. Now, it's very unlikely that anyone's going to use this for a dirty bomb, because the average thug idiot that took it probably wouldn't know what cesium was any different than he would know that this was a brick. I don't even know. I would know cesium when I saw it, although if it was written, I would know to run from it. You would see my Jesse Owens impersonation. The danger is what we saw in Brazil, what I just talked about, playing in it or using it or looking through it or possibly maybe having some idea what it is and selling it to some other idiot that thinks he knows how to contain it. All right, moving on. I got a couple more to get to. Yahoo, of course, always refreshes, which is where if you were an advertiser on this show, like Change Transportation is, you would be getting the prompt, the promotion that Change Transportation is getting now. If you're in Canton, Ohio, and you need a taxi, don't call it Uber, call Change Transportation. Trump now says no time limit to denuclearize North Korea. Now, I want to point out something here that I think a lot of people are going to overlook. First of all, Yahoo News, of course, is left as you can get, but they're reliable with their sources, but their spin is left. The media is going to look for ways to slam President Donald Trump in any way that they can. One of them is going to be by saying that he's not putting enough pressure on North Korea to denuclearize. Now, if Kim Jong-un is lying, or we've talked on here before that we're not sure what he's doing at that power plant, or his nuclear construction plant, I should say. He has a power plant too. It's leaking. It takes a long time to shut down a nuclear power plant. I'm trying to think of how I'm going to explain this. This is the way I would explain it. When I shut this show down, you are going to see or hear me click a button, hit a button, shut the show off. But I have to disconnect two cables that have this running to the TV. I have to unplug both studio lights, shut off the light that's glowing to make Zach glow, and kill the main light above me, and take the power pack out of the extension cord and go into the room where I do all the fancy stuff to make sure it's posted everywhere. Shutting down a nuclear power plant is not just shutting off the off switch. It's the same thing. And if you mess up one of those steps, if you don't unplug the computer from the power strip, then of course you have a meltdown or something like it. So the fact that Kim Jong-un has not shut everything off immediately is not necessarily a sign that Donald Trump is failing. However, nobody wants to be a Neville Chamberlain. We have to hope that Donald Trump isn't. He has said before that he will trust Kim Jong-un until there is a reason not to. This could be a reason not to, and we should pray as a nation that it's not so, because this would be bad. President Donald Trump, that's what Yahoo does, and that's why people don't go to Yahoo, because every time you try to read, it refreshes like that. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that there is no hurry to denuclearize North Korea under his accord with Kim Jong-un. A shift in tone, it's not a shift in tone. From the U.S. leader said the process would start very soon. Well, hopefully it is starting. Discussions are ongoing, and they are going very well. We have no time limit, no speed limit. You might not want to rush people that barely know how to build a nuclear bomb. You got to remember, children building paper airplanes had more success at flight than many of Kim Jong-un's nuclear creations. So having these bozos shut it down, specifically when I think he got mad and killed a great number of the inventors, also is not a good idea, unless you would like to see the Korean Peninsula glowing like the Chernobyl watchdog, which you probably do not. Trump has said he discussed with North Korea, with Vladimir Putin, at the summit in Helsinki, and President Putin is going to get involved in a sense that he is with us. There's no timetable for the process or how it may be carried out. Well, look at the way they wrote this. No hurry to denuclearize. It should start very soon. Total denuclearization and the start of denuclearization is vastly different. A problem that Fukushima has been dealing with, as we've talked about, since day one. So we just need to see which direction he's going in, and it is good that the administration is prudent to watch it. That brings us to the Dumdy of the day. You can hear the Dumdy music playing there. Friends, before we get into it, let me remind you that you can donate to the show at thecorrectviews@hotmail.com through PayPal. Every penny that you give to me, it goes towards a better show. I get a better camera, which, again, won't help the Facebook people, but the YouTube people will love it. And this has been an awful month, an awful year, if you want to tell the truth, but just an awful month. Every time I turn around, any extra money I make, somebody's got their hand out for it. So if you would like to donate and help me keep doing what I do, you can do so at thecorrectviews@hotmail.com through PayPal, or let me know through that email address, and I'll tell you where to send any donations, as it were, hate mail. Friends, Dumdy of the day. Emergency managers are well prepared if a Fukushima-like nuclear incident happens in the U.S. Now, the reason this wins the Dumdy of the day is because this is the exact same BS that we heard in Japan. They were warned about what was going to happen. They were warned about how it was going to happen. And what did we see? It washed right over the wall like they said it would. Josh Wheeler, what's up, said that we need radioactive detectors. That's true. The trouble is there's so many different isotopes that getting one that notices all of them is an extremely expensive endeavor. But yes, you are absolutely right in every way. The authority figures are supposed to have those things, but we can't trust them to tell us what's going on because they're more worried about the bottom line, because, of course, TEPCO is General Electric, and there's Westinghouse and everything else. But the bigger problem here, which is why it gets the Dumdy of the day, is that when you really stop and think about this openly, you can't guarantee that a flood will simply not wash out anything you have as a backup plan. Now, I know I've covered this before, but I guarantee someone is going to say, what if the nuclear power plant isn't near an ocean? I want to say it's in Georgia, but there's a couple in the southern Midwest-ish part of the country where there are dams that if the earthquake was to rupture the dam, it would have the same effect on the power plant as the tidal wave did in Japan. Therefore, you'll be looking at a Fukushima-like situation in the United States. And that's just one of the ways that it could happen. The other ones are a deal with water aquifers underground, and I will admit, get into a little bit of science to which I am fuzzy on. But you can look it up. In late January, in the wee hours, Californians received a tsunami watch triggered by a 7.9 earthquake in the Gulf of Alaska. That type of warning is underscored all along the Pacific coastline, and especially in Southern California, given that it is the location of a new decommissioned nuclear power plant, but one that still houses spent radioactive fuel. Yes, so they know the tidal wave is coming, so feel safe. Of course, we don't, can't. That's live video for you. That type of warning is going to let you know that the tidal wave is coming, but it isn't going to do anything at all to help you move the target. So just feel better, because now you can know you're going to die. To remind Tokyo Electric Power, of course, that's what we've been talking about. I'm not going to read that paragraph. For Southern California generally, the structure in place is to deal not just with an incident at Edison International Sanofi Nuclear Generating Station, also known as SONG, like death song, but also with respect to all types of emergencies, wildfires, flash floods, and earthquakes, to name a few. In all instances, the goal is to keep calm, restore service, and not place the lives of workers at risk while doing so, which is really hard to do, of course, when nuclear poisons are spewing into the air. So it talks about how they organize and how they get ready. Okay, let's see what their great plan is for nuclear. I'm still not seeing it here. Now they're trying to get you away to talk about, floods. Nope, back to the power plant. Thank you. The spent fuel is getting transferred from wet storage, where the rods that house it are going to be cooled, into dry storage, where they be put into concrete encased steel cask and buried underground. Of course, on a strong enough earthquake, the ground shakes and even granite has been known to break, but you're not supposed to mention that. Says what it means is that the Federal Emergency Management Agency no longer evaluates the emergency drills at the plant. To prepare, San Diego County works with outside partners that include the Southern California Edison, who owns songs. Oh, yeah, so they won't lie to you. We have in place all the response mechanisms for when the plant was operational. We always verify independently what the plant is telling us. Yeah, what if it tells you you're screwed? We need to do that before we make any decision. If there was an incident because of movement from the spent fuel, we would respond accordingly by sending out teams, monitoring the area for radiation, and offering assistance. All right, if it gets contaminated into the environment, your teams might know that it's there, but you don't have any way to get nuclear radiation out of the water table. You can't even get tritium out of water with the absolute best filtering technology around today, which comes from France. So don't tell me you've got something in place, because you don't. It says dry storage has had no release of radiation that has endangered the public or the environment. That just means that an earthquake big enough hasn't hit a place where it's buried yet. The problem with that is that these things stay radioactive for millions, in some instances a billion years. And to assume that an earthquake of significant force is not going to hit that area, which will make it just as toxic to life then, if there is any, as it is now, is absurd. Japan was created by an earthquake, but Japan will one day be destroyed by an earthquake. It is the responsibility of the NRC to license which dry cask storage should be approved. Yeah, because they're psychics and they know where earthquakes are going to hit. Friends, you're listening to The Correct Views. This is your massive Fukushima update. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hitting share and subscribe. And thanks for donating if you can. Again, that's a huge help. TheCorrectViews@hotmail.com through PayPal. Good night, friends. God bless.